A few hours after we find out that Rory Dames has resigned, we find out why. An article in the Washington Post by Molly Hensley Clancy detailing allegations of emotional and verbal abuse by multiple former Red Stars players. Among those players, none other than Kristen Press, who had some really almost heartbreaking quotes, Julie, in this article with the Washington Post. She said, "I think Rory emotionally abuses players. He uses his power and status as the coach to manipulate players and get close to them. I was terrified of what Rory would do and say if he found out this was something I'd said. And then I was made to feel by U.S. Soccer that I was in the wrong. There was nothing to report and that this was acceptable. For so many women in this league, you think you don't have any worth. And if you stand up and you say what you think is right or wrong, nobody cares." Julie, one principal difference about these allegations is that the reports didn't go to the National Women's Soccer League. Instead, they went to U.S. Soccer, the actual federation itself. Your reaction to this bombshell news about Rory Dames?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's the fifth NWSL coach accused of misconduct. This year alone, fifth male coach accused of misconduct. When you look across all 10 teams in the NWSL, there's only one coach that hasn't resigned or moved on in the NWSL, and that's in Houston. And what we're seeing again, over and over again in women's sports, in society, that this is a systemic problem that doesn't get addressed because the adults in the room don't stand up and protect the players. And again, whether it was U.S. Soccer, whether it was the NWSL, I mean, there's different entities at different moments who had the opportunity to step in and say, what's going on here? We're looking at this investigation. Let's listen to the players. Let's believe the players. And let's investigate more. And what happens each time? The same thing we keep hearing. They didn't get back to me. The investigation just died. They told me to be quiet. And so again and again, there's no forum or protection in place for these players to actually even voice what's going on. And so the cycle continues. And the cycle continues as we saw it with Paul Riley. The cycle continued with Rory Dames. And meanwhile, you have that many more players suffering and having to take this personal toll. And it isn't until they step up and actually go to a reporter, publicly claim what's happening, that people start to listen. And that has to stop. That has to stop in society. Why, as an institution or an adult in the room or the U.S. Soccer Federation, it is your responsibility. And I know we have a change, thank God, in leadership and culture at U.S. Soccer since 2020, because this has to change. They have Sally Yates coming in, doing an independent investigation, and it is going to be interesting what is found in all of that.
Julie, pretty damning quotes against Sunil Gulati by Christian Press. My question here is, you mentioned the fifth male coach in the league to be accused of misconduct. Why aren't there more female coaches? What's going on? Are there not enough qualified coaches? Because I find that hard to believe.
No, there's qualified coaches, but we're not willing to take a chance on them. We're willing to hire youth coaches. Rory Dames was another youth coach with another club that was local to Chicago, right? And they'll give him a chance. Richie Burke, same thing, youth coach in a club. There are a lot of women, great women's coaches out there, but you wouldn't see someone hire a women's coach in a youth club and say, okay, we're going to take her and bring her to the professional level. Why? Because I don't know why. Because culture, society says that you can't do that. And that's what we have to change. We have to create, of course, more women out there coaching and great coaches, but they're out there. We're just not hiring them. We're fishing in the wrong ponds, and we're going back to what's convenient and what's familiar, because a lot of times it's guys that are running these organizations, these owners, in a place that they're going with what's familiar. And it's this guy they know who's a friend, who's familiar. And that has to change. We have to break that cycle. And it just makes me so sad that it always falls on the players' backs to break the cycle.
Yeah, you know what's really disappointing, Julie, in all of this, when you kind of think about it? These guys aren't leaving, these male coaches, because they've had a crisis of conscience or because somebody above them is policing it. It's really coming down to bravery from the players and exceptional journalism. I mean, for Meg Linehan at The Athletic, for Molly Hensley Clancy with The Washington Post, if they don't do these reports, people like Paul Riley, people like Rory Dames are still managing in the NWSL. It's great to point out the journalism, but the people in charge here are really putting that onus on both the players and the press.
Yeah, and I would take that one step further, that Meg Linehan and Molly are in newer-ish roles with their full responsibility being beat reporters for women's soccer. And Molly is an investigative reporter for the Washington Post focused on women's sports. And now you're seeing these stories surface. I don't think that's a coincidence, because you have these women in these positions who are willing to tell these stories, and players that are trusting to go to them and say, this is what's happening, and no one is listening. We have no other choice but to go to you and share our stories. And that is not the way the system should work. And I still believe this NWSL will be rebuilt in a stronger and better way, but it has to be with the players having a voice and a say in what's going on going forward, or it shouldn't exist.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.